And yes, next thing we should address, these mean comedians making fun of people. Yes, MAGA just can't handle the jokes. Gotta be the softest fucking demographic I've ever seen. Yes, the party of don't tread on me. Yeah. Soon as the comedy comes their way, oh, they crash the fuck out, don't they? Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and okay, my God, if you haven't seen recently, TPUSA has decided to do a little rebranding of Erica Kirk. Yes, it turns out that she's one of the most unlikable people in the entire world, and TPUSA had the bright idea to shake things up a bit and wheel Erica Kirk out onto the Charlie Kirk show, dressed up as Sarah Connor, acting real tough and real badass, to stick it to all the mean people like me on the internet that are making fun of her for being the fakest fucking person on the planet. And the internet, of course, did not disappoint on this one, as there is 1,000 memes out there that are absolutely hilarious that we're going to go through together. So sit down, buckle your seatbelts, and enjoy the ride. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, helps the channel. Follow us on Patreon, grab some America First, America Only merch. Let's do it. Let's jump into it. Of course, first, we have to take a look at this viral clip that was just put out yesterday of the new and improved Erica Kirkinator. All right, Sonya Blade, bring it home for us. What's your message?
Every morning I wake up to a new headline lying about me.
Oh.
I have comedians dressing up in whiteface.
Oh my God, whiteface.
I have people saying I'm not fit to be CEO, and I have Candace Owens claiming I murdered my husband, and the list goes on and on and on.
Yes, the list does go on and
I think
on
claiming she had her own husband killed
because this type of thing is definitely going to convince people that this isn't just a bunch of performative theatrical bullshit, of course. But we're going to address each one of these points she's making one by one together. All right, first she says every day she wakes up there's a new lie about her. Yes, that's why people don't like Erica Kirk. It's because of all these made up lies and rumors. It doesn't have anything to do with, I don't know, the fact she comes off as one of the worst actors of all time and does shit like dresses up like she's Janet Jackson in Rhythm Nation. And I started to think about this, guys. I think she might have a point. I think maybe we are being a little bit unfair to Erica Kirk. I think maybe it is all the lies and rumors is the reason why so many people can't stand her. And it has nothing to do with the things that she says or does that makes her so dislikable.
That young man. I forgive him.
No one will ever replace my husband.
No,
but I
go
do
away.
see some similarities
No.
of my husband in JD.
I have respect for the individuals that are in the pornography industry.
We said our prayer, and we asked the Lord to protect us.
Stop. That's it. That's all I have to say. Stop.
Who am I?
Yes, of course, everybody knows it's super normal for a widow to be bragging and laughing about how much money they're making off of merch literally 6 days after their husband was shot in the face on live TV. Coming out to theatrical WWE-style fireworks everywhere she goes. Making the craziest faces ever. Looking like she's possessed by a demon every time she looks into a camera. Wearing leather pants to turn on her love interest, J.D. Vance, because you know his affinity for couches. Yes, all of these things are super normal for grieving widows. And I mean, what would I know as someone who served in the military and unfortunately have visited far more funerals than I've wanted to be at. Yes, that is totally normal behavior I've seen out of every widow of all the guys that we've lost. Super normal stuff, right? So again, we need to give her a little grace, I think. This is a little too much. And yes, next thing we should address, these mean comedians making fun of people. Yes, MAGA just can't handle the jokes. You know, we see them going after Jimmy Kimmel right now because, oh no, he made a mean joke. Gotta be the softest fucking demographic I've ever seen. Yes, the party of don't tread on me. Yeah. Soon as the comedy comes their way, oh, they crash the out, don't they? And Erica Kirk is no different. But let's talk about this because, of course, this is addressing the objectively hilarious Drewski skit. Now, it's interesting because Drewski never said this was Erica Kirk. He has never once listed her name at all. All he said was this was what conservative women act like, and Erica Kirk somehow took this personally and said that they're targeting her for this. Well, Erica, considering he never said this was you, if the shoe fits, you kind of just admitted that you act like this by whining about it. And here's the other thing. This video has 654,000 shares. It's got tens to, if not hundreds of millions of views, but just in shares, this clip has done more shares than the entire Charlie Kirk show has done since he passed away. In their hundreds of videos on a channel that they've absolutely destroyed. We'll take a look at that next. And so, yeah, unfortunately, this is funny. And when the comedy is so accurate that he doesn't even have to say your name and you still complained about it, well, that's a great joke. And Drewski, how could you ever conflate the two of these things? I mean, Erica Kirk would definitely never do anything like that you made fun of her. Oh, but you didn't actually make fun of her in your video. How could you ever come to this conclusion? Now, I want to break down why is this happening, because nothing Erica Kirk or TPUSA does is by accident. It's all designed, it's all performative, it's all theatrical. We know that now. And the truth is, if you actually look at the numbers, all right, we saw that event in Georgia where she faked some death threats to not have to go because there was literally nobody in attendance there with her and JD Vance. And if we just look at the YouTube channel, they've absolutely destroyed Charlie Kirk in his legacy. I'll show it to you right here. As you can see here, very, very sad to see Charlie Kirk's YouTube channel, nearly 6 million subscribers. And they, how did this Erica Kirk's message to America? I can't believe they actually put this up with this thumbnail as if this was gonna hit. How is this done? Oh, yes, a whopping 7.9 thousand views in 2 hours. Now, I will say that's actually pretty impressive for them. As you see, typically with nearly 6 million YouTube subscribers, they can't even manage averaging above 10,000 views of video. There are channels with 5 to 10,000 subscribers that are averaging more views than that. So again, TPUSA is completely dead, right? We can see it in the numbers. Nobody gives a fuck about this organization anymore, and it's all at the fault of, you know, Blake Neff, Andrew Colvett, and most specifically Erica Kirk for this type of just bizarre performative bullshit that nobody believes. So again, why'd they wheel her out dressed up like Sarah Connor? I mean, just again, super bizarre. This is not the way normal people dress or act. It's just not, right? I don't know if they're trying to put her in a baseball cap to make her seem more likable, make her seem more like the regular people like us. But again, doesn't even fit right. So here's what's actually going on. And they gave the game up there at the end of the rant where she, for the first time, comes out publicly and strikes back at mean old Candace Owens. TPUSA has realized that their organization is completely dead. So what are they going to turn to now? Yes, the drama slop, baby. So again, they're going to wheel her out dressed ridiculous, have her talk some shit back to Candace Owens, and this is what you're going to see out of TPUSA. This is going to be the new and improved Erica Tough Guy Kirk. They're going to have her out there podcasting, and it's going to be this cat fight between her and Candace so that they can try to drum up some type of viewership. Right, you see this out of all these dead Zionist channels, okay? All they can do now is lash out at people like Candace or me or Ian or Tucker. It's all they have left. And so that's what we're most likely going to see going forward, is this new soap opera drama as TPUSA, which is supposed to be a nonprofit organization that is focused on, you know, bringing faith to the young people and getting them out there to vote. No, I have a feeling because they've destroyed the organization so bad, they're going to have to turn to a little TMZ action, baby. Also, we have to remember, based off of the dead YouTube channels, the dead socials, nobody showing up to these events, the money ain't there anymore. Yes, the money printer of TPUSA has all but dried up, and going full WWE is probably the way they think they're going to maybe bring a little bit of it back. So what I see here is a pivot to a WWE-style heel. Yes, they're going to turn Erica Kirk into a heel bad guy to drum up the drama, to have her fight mean anti-hero Candace Owens. That's why they wheeled her out looking like a bad guy from Resident Evil. All right, as a fan of WWE, I know exactly what this is when I see it. Vince McMahon would be proud, TPUSA. Right now, as we love to do, let's get some takes from the internet because this thing's going viral. All right, here we go. Account White People Humor says, breaking, Erica Kirk dresses as an assassin to convince people she didn't kill her husband. And to the comment sections here, it says, is that Sonya Blade? Kevin's cooking today. She laid out that fit on her bed the night before like it was the first day of school. And one defender with a massive 3 likes, leave her alone for F's sake, which is most likely Erica on her burner account. And then Drewski Kirk decided to weigh in on this as well.
Comedians dressing up in whiteface. I have people saying I'm not fit to be CEO.
Oh, I forgot to talk about this. Her comments of people saying she's not fit to be CEO. You're not. I mean, we can literally look at your company. You've destroyed the company. No one is showing up to your events. Charlie Kirk's YouTube channel went from doing anywhere from about 600,000 to 2 million views a video, now down to about 4,000 to 7,000 views a video. If any other nearly billion-dollar company were to burn in that hard, their CEO would have been fired 7 months ago. So it's a tough sell to try to convince people you're doing a good job. And that's another thing you got to realize. People who say, you can't criticize her. You can't criticize the grieving widow. She's the CEO of a nearly billion-dollar company. She is not impervious to criticism. Just like Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk are not impervious to criticism when they say and do dumb shit. All right, here's Erica Kirk, and of course, if you don't get the joke right off the top, as he says here, Top Lobster says, once you go black. Oh, does now the joke make sense? All right, so I'm sure we're going to see a bunch more of this WWE-style tough guy Erica Kirk as she comes out to drum up this drama between Candace Owens, so that way TPUSA can maybe garner some views. That's what I would expect us to see next. Now, this entire video, the entire point is to be funny and to be comedy, right? But the whole point here is that, sorry, conservatives, and as one, I get to say, stop being such fucking pussies. The party of don't tread on me. Oh no, the mean jokes. When did you guys get so fucking soft? Remember, the left can't meme, the left can't take a joke, and now look at you, throwing temper tantrums about comedians making fun of you. Grow a fucking backbone. Or go home and be with your kids and get off social media if you're tired of being made fun of. Because this is America, we have the First Amendment, and the jokes aren't going to stop. So, it's going to do it for this one. Catch y'all in the next video.
Recently, I've been invited on a bunch of podcasts, and so Dr. K has been exposed to a lot of different people. So we're seeing a lot of new people come into our community. And what I'd love to do today is share my perspective on meditation, which is a core part of who we are at Healthy Gamer, and help other people understand how to make meditation easy and effective for you. So today we're going to talk a little bit about why it's hard for most people to meditate and my approach to meditation. So I think the biggest thing to understand, the biggest mistake that most people make, is that we have to remember that every human being has a unique cognitive fingerprint. We all know that different people have different preferences for color, for cuisine, for the way that they like to do their recreation. Some of us like some kinds of games, some of us like to read, some of us like to read romance novels, some of us like to read horror novels. We all have different preferences up here. We also have different aptitudes. So some of us are very artistically gifted, some of us are very mathematically gifted. There are a lot of different brains out there. And so the biggest mistake that we make in teaching meditation is that we try to use one technique for all of the different brains. So I'll give you all an example of kind of why this happens. So let's say that someone wants to meditate. They join a meditation class, usually taught by someone like, let's say, a Buddhist monk, who went and studied a particular technique from a particular master. So in the meditation class, there are about 10 students. And 5 of the students, let's be honest, don't really stick around, right? They show up at the class, they kind of give it a shot, they don't really stick with the practice, it's not really for them. A couple of the students continue to stick around, and one person really falls in love with it. Man, this technique really works great for them. So they stay with the teacher, they get advanced levels of certification, and they spend years studying this stuff, and eventually they become a teacher as well. Now, when this teacher has students that come into their class, what do they know? Right? So they know the specific technique that tended to work really, really well for them. The vast majority of our meditation teachers have studied primarily one tradition. And that didn't work for me. So at this point, I've studied meditation in 5 different countries from over 40 different teachers. And I spent about 7 years studying to become a monk. And basically, I went to different places because I never found my guru. And as a result, I learned lots of different kinds of meditations. The next thing that kind of happened that was really formative for me is I became a psychiatrist. And then I started working with a lot of different patients. And what I discovered is that many of these meditation techniques can be specifically applied to particular people. So we know that in the meditative tradition, we have a ton of teachers. There's one text called Vigyan Bhairav Tantra, which includes 112 techniques on meditation. This text is from the Tantric Hindu tradition, but then we also have Buddhist traditions of Mahayana, Vajrayana, all of these different kinds of mindfulness-based techniques, Zen-based techniques, and there are all of these different spiritual traditions out there. And what makes it hard to meditate is that usually when we go to a teacher, they don't make referrals like we do in the medical world, right? They don't say, oh, based on your cognitive fingerprint, based on your goals of meditation, based on the way that your mind works, I think tantric meditation is not the right move for you, and instead you should go do Zen meditation. I've never heard a meditation teacher say that. Like in my whole history of studying meditation for about 20 years, I've never heard a meditation teacher make a referral to a different tradition. The answer is always, if you keep practicing, you'll figure it out. Keep practicing, keep practicing, keep practicing, and it'll work for you. That's not how we work in the clinical field, and that has really informed the way that I teach meditation. When a patient comes to me and they've got a gunshot wound, I'm a psychiatrist, and I say, hey, maybe you should go see a trauma surgeon because based on your specific needs, this is the kind of meditation that will work for you. And so my approach to meditation is to take a collection of these different techniques and pick the one that fits your cognitive fingerprint. Pick the one that fits your particular goals. And what we tend to see when we do that, and I even started some clinical research that then I abandoned about making meditation regimens for particular diagnoses, which we'll go into. But basically, if you sort of pick the right technique for you, meditation will be easy and you will see a way larger benefit. And the benefit can be very drastic from what most meditation teachers even realize. We all watch videos on the internet because we want to change. The problem is that even though we keep watching them, we don't necessarily change. I want to talk to you all about our coaching program. And if you're not interested, just jump forward 20 seconds and get straight to the video. But if you're someone who is ready to actually make change, if you want to see outcomes in 6, 8, 12 weeks, if you guys are struggling with problems like career stuff, burnout stuff, social skills, low self-esteem, if you're trying to struggle to motivate yourself to actually act, that's what we built a coaching program for. Check out the link in the description below to see how coaching can help you. And now on to the video. So let's say that this is all of the meditation techniques. And we have a lot of different traditions. We've got the tantric tradition over here. We've got the Zen tradition over here. We've got all these different traditions, right? We also have the more devotional things like prayer is over here, which is like a form of meditation. You can argue that. And then there's lots of different, things over here. So we've got Hindu Tantra. We've got Buddhist Tantra. So this is like Vajrayana is Buddhist Tantra. And then we have even things like modern Tantra. So you have modern tantric gurus who will sort of teach their own version of Tantra. So you have, the point is that there's a lot of different kinds of techniques. And so let's just go through a couple and understand how these techniques are very specific to how these techniques can specifically help a certain kind of mind and for a certain problem. Okay, so let's start with a very simple technique from the yogic tradition. So there's one technique called pranayam, and specifically some kinds of pranayam. So let's call it Nadi Shuddhi and Kapalbhati. I mean, when I say let's call it, these are what these two techniques are. So these are breathing techniques. This one is alternate nostril breathing, and this one is a rapid, forceful exhalation. So you basically exhale very rapidly. No. And as you exhale very rapidly, your CO2 levels actually drop. And then what this ends up doing is this reduces your respiratory rate. So basically, we're going to forcibly hyperventilate. And if you do that for a few seconds, you'll start to feel lightheaded, and then you stop. And what you'll notice is that your breathing is very, very calm at the end of the practice. So physiologically, what's going on when we do a practice like Kapalbhati is we are decreasing the activity of our sympathetic nervous system. So this is where our adrenaline system, our cortisol system, our stress system. So what we find is that these techniques will actually activate this thing called the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve will slow our heart rate down, will chill us out, will suppress cortisol and adrenaline production, so it physiologically de-stresses us. And what I find is that these techniques are very, very useful for people who have very active minds and things like anxiety or panic. Because remember that anxiety and panic are not just in the mind. There's a whole physiology that goes with it. So if you're someone who wants to use meditation specifically to calm your mind, and you want to physiologically induce a state of chill in your brain, and you trend towards the more anxious, more panic-oriented kind of mind, if you deal with stress, not by getting isolated and withdrawn, but by panicking, and your mind kind of flies in 1,000 different directions, I need to do this, I need to do this, you just need to chill the fuck out. If you need to chill the fuck out, this is the right technique for you. Now, here's the problem. If you go to a Zen teacher who just simply tells you to observe your thoughts, right? Just observe your thoughts. And you're someone who's prone to panic, it's like, oh my God, I'm going to die. Everybody's going to die. You can't just observe them, because the moment that you let them run free, it's like, oh my God, I'm going to die, and then everyone's going to die, and then everyone's going to die, and then you let it run free, and it's like a bull running around, like hopped up on cocaine in your house, destroying everything. That doesn't work. Right? And if you go to a Zen teacher, they're like, just keep fucking doing it, bro. Just keep fucking doing it. And all the while, you're like inducing a panic attack. So no. We don't want to do Zen meditation in this kind of situation. I'm not saying that it can't help. And there are studies that show that Zen or mindfulness techniques are actually effective in anxiety disorders. But in my experience, my personal take, right? And that's what this is my personal take. This is not nearly as effective as using meditation techniques that physiologically activate the parasympathetic nervous system and calm you the fuck down. That's just one example. So let's take another example. So sometimes we also have people who are, let's say, depressed. So in this case, so these are people who, why do you want to meditate? Well, my main problem is that, like, I'm sluggish. I'm slow. I have no motivation. It's hard to get out of bed every morning. I don't care about anything. I just feel lethargic and sluggish. Maybe I have a clinical diagnosis. Maybe I don't. So that's where we're going to take something from the Buddhist tradition. I don't know where this is. I'm going to put Himalayan up here. Okay. So there's another super cool technique called Tumo. So Tumo is the name of a tantric goddess of fire and passion. So there's a specific group of Buddhist monks that live in Nepal that worship this goddess of fire. She's like the goddess of fire. And the cool thing is their techniques are completely different from Kapalbhati and Nadi Shuddhi. These techniques are designed to energize. Okay? So these techniques are designed to cultivate your inner passion and fire. And the physiology of this is fucking fascinating. So there have been studies done. There's one study from 1982, okay? And this study found that monks who are practitioners of this can increase the temperature of their digits, okay? This is fingers and toes, by 8 degrees Celsius. Think about 8 degrees Celsius, right? For those of y'all that are, what is that in, I don't know how much an 8 degree, I guess it's like 15 degrees Fahrenheit is close to what it is in terms of like a change. What this kind of means is like think about that. This is an actual technique that people do in the Himalayas. And it energizes them. It allows them to stay in the Himalayas without like sweaters and other kinds of things. I imagine it must increase our brown fat production and some of these other things. We don't quite know what the physiologic method is, but people have literally done measurements that this kind of meditation technique will literally energize you. And it's not just a technique to increase the temperature of your peripheral digits. It also has a similar cognitive effect, a very similar energizing effect. I teach a variant of Tumo when I was working in Maine in the United States. I was working at a drug rehab in Maine. So it's cold outside. And what I would do is take a group of patients. We would go outside with like very like light sweater. And then I tell them, we're going to take off our sweaters. We're just going to wear our shirts. And it's like 40 degrees outside. And we're going to do this meditation technique together. And we're going to be outside in 40-degree weather. Okay. You can wear a jacket if you want to, but you won't need one by the end of the practice. And it's beautiful. It's incredibly energizing. So it's a completely different tradition, completely different technique, completely different effect. And so think about this as well. So if your mind is overly anxious and a meditation technique calms you down, that's great. But if your mind is sluggish and slow and you have no energy, you don't need a technique that's going to calm you down. You need a technique that will do the opposite. And on the flip side, if we have anxiety and we want to slow down our mind and we do a technique that increases our passion, increases the energy within the mind, it may have the opposite effect. But it doesn't end with just these two, okay? So the next thing that we're going to talk about is, let's say we're over here, we've got shunya meditation. So if you look at studies on meditation, one of the things that we know is that studies on meditation show that it will dissolve the ego, okay? And we also know from studies on psychedelics that if you have a ego dissolution experience during something like MDMA or psilocybin, that correlates with healing trauma. So if you take a psychedelic and you just like see cool colors and stuff, we don't see a whole lot of clinical improvement with that. What seems to correlate the most with clinical improvement in psychedelics is actually dissolving the ego, okay? And this is the other cool thing, is that if we look at, for example, the mechanism of action of ketamine, which is the fastest pharmaceutical treatment we can give for someone who has major depressive disorder, it works incredibly fast. Ketamine is literally a dissociative agent. So ketamine was not developed as a psychiatric treatment. Ketamine was developed as anesthesia. So when we're like cutting into someone on the operating table, we're going to infuse them with ketamine so that they dissociate and they don't feel the pain. So the interesting thing that we know about ketamine is that this too causes a dissociation, a separation from the ego, which can be really healing if you have depression. Why is that? Because in depression, we're beating ourselves up all the time, right? I'm a piece of shit. I suck. All these people would be better without me. Everyone is better than me. I have low self-esteem. So if you kind of think about it, you're so caught up in your own head about who you are. And so we want to unplug that. So ketamine does it. Hopefully psychedelics do it. I don't recommend y'all using either of those unless it's the guidance of a licensed professional. The cool thing is that there are safe forms of meditation like shunya practice. So shunya practice is... Shunya is the Sanskrit word for void, null, or zero. And if you kind of like look at our sense of identity, there's a set of practices that help you connect with the void within you. And whatever kinds of ego-oriented crap you have, you can kind of dump into the void within you, and it'll kind of disappear. And then you'll be kind of neutral, and you'll be chill, and you'll be kind of like egoless, right? You'll start to, it's super cool. Like, I love shunya practices. It's a big part of my personal practice. It's what helps me keep my head on straight, because even as I become successful, I remember I'm just the same piece of shit that I used to be. And then on the flip side, I also remember that even when I was this piece of shit, I'm the person that I am now. So I'm neither good nor bad. I'm just me. I'm doing the best that I can. Other people can judge me if they want to, but I'm not going to judge myself. I'm going to just try to be the best human that I can be. Right? So notice that when I say I'm going to try to be the best human that I can be, I'm not saying I'm a good human or bad human, because the moment that I say I'm a good person, I open myself up to ego, disappointment, because if I become a good person, that means one day I may be a bad person, right? Because being a good person means I got to check all these boxes. And even if I think I'm a bad person, that's going to cause all kinds of problems, because if I try to go do something and I believe I am a bad person, right? So we see this a lot with, like, for example, people who struggle with dating, and they'll think to themselves, I'm ugly, no one would ever want to date me. And then they go on a date, and then that kind of mental energy sabotages the date and creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. So what we really want to do is, some of us need to dissolve our ego so that we can just be like neutral versions of ourselves, who are not beating ourselves up, who are not narcissistic. So I'll use this technique in my patients who have narcissistic personality disorder, and it works incredibly well, right? Because the whole point with NPD is that people are raging narcissists and they have no empathy and they have all these like high ideas of ourselves. Just dissolve it all and it'll help a lot. Key point is that this kind of technique is not very physiologically active. That's not where it works. It doesn't increase our core temperature by 3 or 4 degrees Celsius, doesn't increase the temperature of our toes by 8 degrees Celsius, does not recruit the vagus nerve, does not chill us out. What it is a more mental technique. It is a technique that affects things like our ego. And the last technique that I'm going to talk to you all about, and you'll notice that I'm kind of pulling things from the yogic tradition because that's what I've studied the most, is Yoga Nidra. So Yoga Nidra is a very interesting relaxation practice. So it has benefits for things like anxiety and stuff. But the real point of Yoga Nidra is that it induces our mind into a auto-suggestive or hypnotic state. So it's a very specific practice where we put our mind in such a scenario where whatever we implant in there will kind of bubble up. Now, I know this sounds kind of weird, but I want y'all to understand this. So if you're walking around, okay, random thoughts will bubble up from the bottom of your mind. And if you think about it, like, what kinds of thoughts are these? They can be like, I'm a loser, I'm great, oh noes, or I really want to game right now. So if you kind of think about it, I'm not saying that these thoughts are good or bad or whatever, but if you look at the mechanism of mind, something within your mind populates your mind with all kinds of thoughts. And if we look at a lot of psychiatric medications, what we literally try to do is dull these fuckers out, right? So what we do if someone has an OCD or an anxiety disorder is we'll give them an SSRI, a selective serotonergic reuptake inhibitor. And what we know that SSRIs do, or benzodiazepines and anxiety disorders, is they literally slow the activity of our mind. They kind of emotionally numb us out so that we produce fewer toxic thoughts. But the key fact remains that these thoughts are still coming from somewhere. So when we do something like psychotherapy, we're going in there and we are annihilating the source of these negative thoughts through something like psychotherapy. So this is what's super cool. Psychotherapy is a discipline where we go down there and we clean out the bad stuff. But what yoga nidra is, let's say there's something bad down here. Something bad down here, okay? And in psychotherapy, we're trying to heal it. What yoga nidra is the ability to implant stuff down here, whatever you want. And so when I work with people and we do yoga nidra, there's this part at the end of the practice called sankalpa, or resolve. So you implant a resolve into your subconscious mind. And when you implant a resolve into your subconscious mind, cool stuff will happen when you start to face adversity, right? So like, for example, I worked with one patient was like, you know, as long as I give up, I can do it. I mean, as long as I don't give up, I can do this. As long as I don't give up, I can do this. As long as I don't give up, I can do this. And what used to happen is anytime they would get some setback, they would like throw in the towel, right? They'd like be like, oh man, like this isn't going to work. This person is going to break up with me anyway. I might as well break up with them. I'm not going to get this promotion. My boss doesn't like me. So they'd sabotage their life in so many ways. And this is what's super cool. As we did this practice over the course of weeks and months, this thought started implanting itself into their brain. And you can't just do like auto suggestion. You can't just repeat it to yourself. There's a lot of like details about what sinks into the mind, right? You can't just tell yourself, I'm a good person, and it'll sink in. Stuff that sinks into your mind needs to be in the right kind of state. This is why traumas can be so devastating. It's because that negative experience shapes your mind in a certain way, and it sinks really deep inside. And then if you get traumatized or abused, then that low self-esteem lives down there for a very long time. So in psychotherapy, we're really good at getting rid of the negative, but we're not very good at implanting the positive. And that's where sankalpa comes in. So as this person starts to do the sankalpa, and then when they get setbacks, this thought bubbles up to the surface. As long as I don't give up, I can do this. And they're like, okay, fine, I'm not going to give up because I can do this. It changes the way that they think, and it changes the way that they live their life. So this is just 4 examples of different kinds of meditation techniques that I use. This is kind of my approach, is to remember that, first of all, not every person is the same. Different people have different preferences. Right? So different color preferences, different cuisine preferences. All of us have unique brains that have unique cognitive fingerprints. And the purpose of meditation is, the point of meditation is to help our mind move in the direction that we want to, and ideally even transcend mind. Conversation for a different day. So if you're struggling with meditation, it's not because you suck at it or it's not for you. I don't believe that. Generally speaking, I would say that 80 to 90 to 95% of people that I work with, I can teach them a meditation practice that works for them. And I would say fully half of these people or more were not super into it. They're like, yeah, I gave it a shot, right? And so this is where we teach it. I think it's all about teaching the right kind of meditation. So this is kind of like saying, like, you know, I don't like to exercise. Well, like, you may not like playing basketball, but have you ever gone rock climbing? Or people who are going hiking and they're like, oh, I think hiking is incredibly boring. Have you ever tried like competitive racquetball? You know, like there's all kinds of different things that qualify as exercise. We just have to find the right thing for you. So our approach to meditation here at Healthy Gamer is to try to understand who you are, understand what your goals are, and then try to find a specific practice that works for you. So you'll find this all throughout our YouTube channel. Generally speaking, we don't teach meditation quite as much on live streams anymore because we've taught a lot of it. But we also have a lot of resources like Dr. K's Guide to Meditation, where we go through the basics. But basically in every single guide that we have, guide of depression, guide of anxiety, guide on ADHD, soon to be guide on trauma, we go through particular practices that are designed to do everything from calm down your nervous system to dissolve your ego. So I hope that's been helpful to you. You don't have to learn meditation from us, by the way. Just please don't give up on it and try to find the right teacher for you.
How do I talk to people like I'm normal is one of the most common questions that I receive from my own brain. And I'm not the only one suffering from this declining social skill epidemic, I hope. Studies show that face-to-face social interactions have dropped 45% in the last 20 years, which to many sounds like their birthday wish actually came true. But the result is significantly worse social skills across society. This has led to a sharp uptick in uncomfortable small talk, extroverted dumb people climbing to the top of the societal food chain, and you coming off as weird to people when you were just trying to be friendly. We need to turn the tables and equip people with strong social skills to offset the impact of social media, the internet, and smartphones. Ideally, these lessons wouldn't be taught through social media, the internet, and smartphones, but let's be real. It's important to meet people where they are. The people who need it the most aren't leaving their house anyway, and anyone who clicked on a video about how to talk to people is probably a freaking weirdo. There are lots of reasons why people have become antisocial in recent years. Lots of people work remote, you can get your food and groceries delivered through an app, and people have stopped inviting each other to hang out as much. Social skills are just like a muscle, and the current state of technology has allowed that muscle to atrophy for hundreds of millions of people around the world. But just like muscles, social skills can be improved with proper routine and consistency. And just like muscles, good social skills can bring all the boys to the yard. Can we do a rewrite on that? So there's a lot of bad advice out there. Let's get those out of the way first. People always tell you to be yourself, and then they tell you to not be awkward. For me, you kind of just have to choose one. Some people say to imagine the worst case scenario first. That way, reality will always seem less bad. Imagining the worst case scenario is pretty much what my social anxiety already does for me, and I don't think that's helping, so ignore that advice. Eye contact shows confidence. It kind of does, but it's way too easy to overdo it. You can go from being confident to being creepy with 4 extra seconds of eye contact. Too much margin for error, best to avoid. Treat everyone like they're your best friend. All of my best friends relentlessly make fun of each other, so this doesn't really work unless the person you're talking to is really into negging, in which case, definitely steer clear. Some people use online resources like Reddit, which has some pretty good threads and advice. The main downside, however, is that you're getting advice from people who post on Reddit. WikiHow has lots of articles on social skills, but it's really the weirdest corner of the internet, and it feels like it's meant for aliens thousands of years from now to learn about what human life was like back then. There's also channels like Charisma on Command, which I've seen a bunch of, and it's definitely pretty interesting, but I'm sure anyone who has tried to apply conversational strategies mid-conversation knows that it's almost impossible without coming off
Little Robotronic.
I just rewatched School of Rock, so it's very fresh in my mind. Okay, let's debunk some myths about social skills. Myth number 1, I'm just not a social person. This is a static mindset that inherently limits your capabilities because you're not open to the fact that you can grow and change and improve. It's like when people say they're not a fit person. You may not be right now, but if you work out over and over again, you can become one. If you have a growth mindset and realize that with effort you can be anything you want to be, that'll open up your world. Lawrence from School of Rock thought he wasn't cool enough to be in a band.
I'm not cool enough. People in bands are cool. I'm not cool.
But once he opened up to the fact that he could be anything he wanted to be, all of a sudden he became
Mr. Cool.
God, I love that movie. Myth number 2, people are judging me. I used to think that people made fun of how awkward I could be, but the reality is everyone is awkward sometimes, and nobody's really thinking that much about you. The spotlight effect that each of our egos has is very irrational, and in reality, every person you think is judging you has had countless weird, awkward moments of their own. Kind of like Tamika from School of Rock. She thought that because she was a little chubby, people would make fun of her, but she went out there and did her thing, and that's what really matters.
Nice pipes, Tamika.
Myth number 3, long pauses are awkward. That wasn't so bad. Pauses are only awkward if you feel like the conversation is a performance. In reality, a little silence is totally fine. It gives your brain a second to catch up. If a conversation stalls for a beat, that's not failure, it's a little space. Conversations are less like a performance and more like jazz.
You like jazz?
Also, silence is way better than the things people say trying to fill silence. One time I was on a Hinge date and there was an awkward pause, so to fill the silence, I was like, did you hear about that guy who killed a bunch of different girls he met online? Oh no, don't worry, that's not me. I'm not gonna kill you. No, seriously, I'm not gonna kill you. Trust me. Okay, if I wanted to, you would already... I'm just gonna leave. Okay, time to get into some common mistakes people make. Mistake number 1, asking interview questions. So where are you from? Ohio. Oh, cool. What do you do? Marketing. Nice. I love marketing. Failure. Who loves marketing? Asking questions like this feels like socializing, but it's actually just trading resumes, and it can get exhausting. Most conversations have to start pretty basic, but you can add a little humanity into it by talking about your own experiences and how they relate. Don't just interview, participate. If someone says they do marketing, talk about any experiences you've had with it at your job, what your friends who are in marketing say about it, and if you have absolutely nothing to say about marketing, don't just make up random things you don't mean. Bring up a related subject, talk about what you do, or ask something else. Don't just say, I love marketing, like a weird NPC. The idea is to try while being genuine. You're not going to connect with everyone, but trying is a rep that gets you better and better. You have to accept that there are people you're not going to vibe with, but in the end, remember that none of it really matters. We're all going to die anyway. Some sooner than others. So just say the word and I can get the job done. Okay? Just let me know. Mistake number 2, forcing a script. If you've mentally ran through the exact conversation you're going to have with somebody, you're going to have a bad time. Because trying to plan the perfect thing to say in a conversation is just following a script while the other person is doing improv. As soon as they say something you don't expect, you're going to panic because your script is now useless. Let go of the script. Let the conversation wander and be messy, and know that it doesn't really matter. We're all going to die one day. Some sooner than others. I'm serious. Just say the word. Mistake number 3, trying to be liked. Trying to be liked makes you come across needy and people-pleasing with no real backbone. This is something much deeper than social skills that need to be worked on. This is a matter of self-esteem. This is more about your relationship to yourself than anything. But the bottom line is, if you know that you're going to be totally okay if a conversation doesn't go well, then you'll put less pressure on yourself, the conversation will inevitably go better, and you not trying to be liked makes it easier for people to like you. This is a pretty complicated concept, but a lot of this topic is covered in the book The Courage to be Disliked, which I highly recommend. I hope you like it. Or I'm not trying to make you like it. And I don't need you to like it. I should probably reread the book. Also, this book is kind of like a muscle because it brings all the boys to who is writing this. Here are some specific actionable tips that you can use in social settings. First off, socializing is not about being the most interesting, extroverted, or charismatic person in the room. It's just about practice. And when you get it in your head that you're practicing, there's less pressure on any single instance because it's just one data point among many that are trending in the right direction. To practice, use everyday interactions. Having a short conversation with a barista, talking to people at the dog park, explaining to them that no, you don't have a dog, but you're just at the dog park to make friends because you saw a YouTube video that told you to. Watching them walk away slowly and then begin to run away because you just started chasing them. These are all great ways to build your social skills through low stakes repetition. Tip number 2, thread the conversation. Instead of asking a new question every 10 seconds, just take a word they said and build on it. For example, if they said, yeah, I have a dog, you can say something like, oh, cool, I'm at the local dog park all the time. And they'll be like, oh, you have a dog? And then you can just start chasing them now because you already know how this ends. Tip number 3, ask follow-up questions. If you don't have anything to add that connects to what they say, just ask a follow-up question and put the focus off of yourself. Skip the resume question and try something like, what got you into that? How do you like it so far? Did you hear about that guy who killed a bunch of different girls he met online? Is that Mace? Tip number 4, let conversations meander. You don't need a destination. Some of the best conversations go nowhere. Don't force segues. Don't stress about topics. Just ride the wave. You don't have to keep things on track because there is no track. You're boundless, like a ghost. You can be whatever you want to be, like Ned Schneebly from School of Rock. He thought he had to be a square substitute teacher because of his girlfriend, but no, he decided to rise above that and become a music teacher, despite her discouraging it. She then went on to star as the lead in Wreck-It Ralph and do a bunch of Netflix specials, so maybe she had a point in the end. Damn, she was even in School of Rock. God, I love that movie. Tip number 5, awkwardness is universal. Awkward moments and conversations are all part of life, and everyone has those moments. Don't fear it, expect it. With repetition, you become a bit more desensitized to it. It becomes more manageable, but it doesn't disappear altogether, you just stop caring about it. Life happens, conversations come and go, people get assaulted at dog parks. Everyone needs to just relax, put it in the past, and turn on some smooth jazz.
So for this person and everyone else out there who's stuck trying to find a career, what I'd say is like, think about what you're passionate about first. And then try to figure out, how can I make this work as a job? How can I get compensated for doing this? How do I find a career when everything in life is boring to me? I've tried college and self-study in the past, but I never finished anything. I've switched majors like 8 times and I was still unhappy. I just can't really see myself doing anything, to be honest. In the past 10 years, the only career fields I've worked on have been restaurants and clinics, working in the billing call center departments. I've hated them both because both are dead-end, low-paying, stressful, and soul-crushing. I don't care about being super rich. I just want to find something that pays decent and that also doesn't make me want to kill myself by the end of the week. This is something that I can absolutely empathize with. I had a period of time in my life when I was like, really felt like everything was sort of a dead end and nothing was really working for me. So let's take a look at this, because I think this is a really common problem. So nowadays, a lot of people struggle to find a career and find everything to be boring, right? So they're like, I tried this, I found it boring. I tried this, I found it boring. Like, how do I figure out like what kind of career to have? So I want to talk to you all a little bit about how we approach decision making and how to find the right career for you, okay? So the first thing is that we have this idea that like we need a career, right? And so like we're sort of like taught like societally that there is, oh God. So this is a really common problem that people have, right? They'll say like, how do I find the right career for me? Like I've tried this, I did this for a while and none of it really worked. I didn't enjoy it. How do I find the right career? So the first thing to understand is that we tend to think about a career, right? We say to ourselves like, oh, like I need a career of some kind. The other thing that tends to happen is if we look at how people make decisions, it's basically like monkey see, monkey do. So I remember I was working with a young patient of mine who had started to use substances, and so I was his addiction psychiatrist. And he had gone to a 30-day rehab, and he was trying to figure out, what to do with his life. And I was kind of asking, okay, so like, what's your plan going forward? And he's like, well, I've got a buddy that works at an auto shop, so I think he can hook me up with a job. And so it was really interesting because as I talked to him, what I realized is like the options that he was considering are basically exactly what's in front of him. So we as human beings tend to be like very monkey see, monkey do. So like based on when we think about the options for like what we should do with ourselves, it tends to be based on things that are immediately available. Like, so I'm the child of 2 doctors and I grew up in a small town in East Texas where 3 out of 5 of the Indian kids in my class, like in my grade, there were like 5 Indian kids that were in my grade in the entire city. 3 of them wound up becoming doctors. So when I was growing up and I went to college, like I majored in pre-med because that's just what people did, right? So when we look at decision making, what we tend to do is we don't actually make like objective decisions. We don't really look at all of the choices available to us. We tend to reach for the first thing that is available to us. So like it's kind of weird because there's a good exploration of this kind of thing in who's that Nobel Prize winning economist, Daniel Kahneman. So I think he sort of talks about this. It's important in medicine as well, where one of the things that doctors are trained how to do is to not make decisions based on the first thing that pops into their head, or the second thing, or the third thing, or the fourth thing. So a lot of times doctors make mistakes when they sort of rely on like their first instinct to make a decision. And what we train doctors to do is something called differential diagnosis, which is to think through all of the possibilities before settling on one. So I see this a lot where people are trying to figure out what should my career be. I've tried all this stuff. I've tried switching majors 8 times and it still hasn't worked. What do I do? So I'd say the first thing to do is to take a step back and to really think about, okay, what are all of the possibilities here? Construct a differential diagnosis about how you can spend your time. And when someone says, I can't figure out what my career is, I'd say that's actually too narrow to begin with. Because forget about a career. Like even a career is maybe not like is the problem, is that your mind is coming up with solutions that are already so narrow. So if your problem is that I can't find a career I enjoy, I think part of that problem is because Your mind is narrowly chasing options for a career, and by doing so, you may actually miss out on all kinds of things that you could earn like a livable wage with, but your mind won't even consider them because you're locked into this idea of career. Because the problem is that when you think about career, right, like then you start thinking about things like call center. Oh, I can get a job at a call center. I can get a job at a billing department. I can get a job in food service. So you're reaching for the simplest thing, the most available thing, instead of considering all of your options. So what I'd strongly recommend is take a step back from the idea of a career entirely. Even if we look at how we started Healthy Gamer, like, this is a mental health startup that's relatively successful, right? Like, we're doing some good stuff. We're helping some people, things like that. I did not start out like thinking I'm gonna create a mental health startup and quit my job. That is really not what I cared about at all. It was like, hey, there's like people who are really struggling in a particular way, and I'm gonna try to help these people because it seems like no one else is. And so when you're really thinking about what you should do, the first thing I do is take a step back from the idea of career. And so this person was kind of saying, everything that I've tried is boring.
I'm dying.
So then what I'd say is like, take even a further step back and ask yourself the question, if you're trying to find a non-boring career, start by asking yourself, what do you enjoy, and forget about the career, right? Start to think like, okay, what's something that I'm genuinely interested in? What's something that I enjoy doing? What's something that I really like, kind of am passionate about? When was the last time that I really had a lot of fun doing something? When was the last time I was intellectually engaged? What do I care about? What do I think I can do to make the world like a better place? Like, what's some kind of problem in the world that I would like to have an impact on? And you have to be kind of careful here, because your mind may go for more what we call premature closure, because it may say, oh, I'm really passionate about, like equal rights, but I have no qualifications. Okay? And so then what your mind does is it'll say, oh, that's not an option because I have no qualifications. That's a premature closure too. Thinking about a career is also a premature closure. So what we want to do is take a really big step back and then start to think about what you actually care about, what you find interesting. And then once you pick a couple of those things, then what we're going to do is like an investigation based on what you find interesting. And what the purpose of an investigation is a couplefold. The first is like, it's really interesting because I don't know if you guys know this, but like there are professional DMs in New York City that will charge like $400 a week to run like a DMing session, right? And so you may say to yourself, like, I never realized that was a career. I don't even know if it is a career. But what some people discovered is that, hey, I'm really, really passionate about this, and it does seem like there's a lack of good DMs. So there's actually like people who are willing to pay like $400 a week. You've got like, people who are, maybe investment bankers or whatever, like in New York City, there's like 5 people in the group. They're all willing to chip in $80 a week. And like, that's their entertainment budget, because if you go out a single night, like you go to dinner and you get drinks in New York City, it's like $200 at a minimum, right? So there's actually like supply and there's demand. And like, I've actually met some professional DMs, and it's kind of interesting. You may say to yourself, I never realized that was a career. And like, yeah, because we don't think about that as a career, right? It's not something that people around you are going to be regularly doing, but there are all kinds of niche opportunities for you to make a livable wage doing something that you love. And the key thing to get into that kind of thinking is to step out of the idea of a career. So I'd say start with something like thinking about, what do you actually enjoy? What do you care about? What do you like find interesting? And then what you want to do is start to think a little bit about, okay, like how can I pursue this? How can I make this work? And then something really fascinating will happen. So let's say that you're interested in like, equal rights or whatever. Like, then the interesting thing is you may not have any skill set, but as you start to like move towards something that you genuinely care about, the ability to do things that you don't enjoy will become far more tolerable. So the problem right now is that we have a group of people who like go to school and they have no end game in mind.
How is that?
They're not going to school for
like
a particular reason that they're
what
passionate about. This is something in addiction psychiatry that we call a competing interest. So this is a really important principle. If you want to do something that's very, very difficult, you have to have a competing interest. So in addiction psychiatry, if you want to get someone to quit smoking, Smoking offers a strong biological reward. It offers dopamine. It offers nicotine. It offers socialization. It helps calm you down. It's an easy way to meet people. So smoking has all of these advantages. And it turns out that if you want to get someone to quit smoking, you can't just give them information and say, hey, you're going to get heart disease, you're going to get lung cancer, you'll get bad, complications of COVID. All of that information doesn't actually affect behavior. What affects behavior is a competing interest, something that you care about. And once you develop a competing interest, so, my favorite thing in terms of working with smokers, I'll ask them, like, what do they care about, right? What do they think is interesting? And so I had, one patient, and this is sort of the example that I use. So I had one patient who was a smoker, and I tried to explain to him, this is early on in my career. And so I tried to explain to them, I was like, okay, if you smoke, you're going to get lung cancer. Do you want lung cancer? And he's like, no, I don't want lung cancer. Comes in a month later, I'm like, how's your smoking going? He's, oh, I'm still smoking. I'm like, okay, you'll also get heart disease. You'll get stroke. Comes in a month later, and he's like, still smoking, right? So then finally I get to like talk to the guy and I get to know him. And then like it turns out that he's got a daughter and he's like really happy and like he's, he likes his daughter a lot. And then, I even try this sort of thing where it's sort of like, hey, like, if you want to stay alive and healthy for your daughter, like, maybe you should quit smoking. He's like, yeah, that sounds really important, but he still continues to smoke. So then one day we talk a little bit about, oh, would you like to walk your daughter down the aisle one day? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. And then I ask him, when you walk your daughter down the aisle, do you want to be wheeling an oxygen tank behind you? And then he's like, no, right? So like he's got this vision. He's working really hard. He's like trying to be a good parent. He wants to like be there for his daughter. And then it's about finding something that they care about. And once you develop that competing interest, that competing interest, that thing that you care about, then becomes enough to overcome all of the biology, all of the dopamine, all of the nicotine, all of the social aspects of smoking. And then over the next like 6 to 8 months, he actually like quit smoking. And it's all about developing a competing interest. And the problem right now that I see is that a lot of people will like find a career because it's logical, it's good on paper. But that logical advantage of like, oh, I should do this and should do this is not enough to actually overcome the suffering that you have to go through for the career. So as you think about what you actually care about, and then you enroll in a school with a purpose, and then even though you don't want to take statistics, even though you don't want to take, philosophy or like intro to chemistry, once you have a good competing interest and you're like, hey, this is something that I actually care about, I want to learn this and this is what I'm passionate about. And then what you do is you align your career behind your passions, right? It's not, how do I find a career that I can enjoy and like your passions are sitting over here. You start by like thinking about what you care about, what you enjoy, and then you try to do like a very systematic process of making it work. So I'd say like if we go back to this Reddit post, we can kind of see it pretty clearly that like, I want you all to pay attention to this. How do I find a career when everything in life is boring to me? I don't think everything in life is boring, right? What we see is that I've tried college and self-study, but I never finished anything. I keep on switching majors and I'm still unhappy. So the real question that this person should be asking is, what are you attracted to? What do you gravitate towards? What do you care about? What do you genuinely enjoy doing? And then be careful because your mind may tell you, oh, you can't do that because X, Y, Z. And the cool thing is that when your mind tells you you can't do that because X, Y, Z, that is actually going to be like your solution. So as your mind tells you you can't do that because you haven't graduated from college, then you know what you need to do. You need to graduate from college. Well, you can't graduate from college until you get into college. Okay, so then it sounds like what we need to do is get into college. You can't get into college without applying to college. Okay, then it sounds like I need to write an application. And the cool thing is then when you write your college application and you write your college essay, if you have that end goal in mind, like when you look at your essay, it's going to be like, why do you want to go to college? I want to go to college because I'm interested in supporting equal rights in developing countries. I want to go to college because I'm interested in esports. I want to study creative writing because I want to be a professional DM. And I want formal training in sort of constructing adventures and storytelling. Like, colleges love seeing unorthodox candidates that have like interesting ideas about what they want to do, right? It's really fascinating. And what I found time and time and time again is that people who are able to do this process of taking a step back, really think about what you enjoy doing, think about what you're passionate about, and then if you have to make some sacrifices along the way to get to where you want to go, it works out really, really well. So for this person and everyone else out there who's stuck trying to find a career, what I'd say is like, think about what you're passionate about first. And then try to figure out, how can I make this work as a job? How can I get compensated for doing this? And like literally it was like, I enjoy talking to gamers all day. Like that's what I like doing. I like helping people with their problems. So one way that I was able to turn that into a career is by going to medical school and becoming a psychiatrist. But then I was also like, you know, that's not sufficient for me. I actually like vibing with chat. So what are we going to do? I guess maybe I'll start streaming on Twitch. And like, I don't know if y'all get this, but like I just started streaming on Twitch one day, right? Like I had like 10 people who were viewers, and then we had like 15, and then we had 50, and then we had 200. We were like sitting around 200 viewers for a couple of weeks. And if you're passionate about something and you kind of give it your all and you try really hard, it turns out that I think the world will kind of respond to you like pretty well. And that's why we have professional DMs. We've got people who are like, hey, I really love DMing, and like that's their job now. So what if he doesn't know what he enjoys doing, or he lost interest in everything he used to love like me? So that's a great question. So then the question becomes, how did you lose interest, right? Because that passion is there, it's just buried. And so then I think we'll have a couple of other posts today that may relate to that. But like, interest is something that is not like gained or lost. I think it tends to be buried or not buried. So case in point, like I had COVID the last 2 weeks. So like all of the things that I was passionate about and interested in, I didn't care about, right? Like when you've got COVID, you just don't care about anything. You're kind of anhedonic. Even playing video games and stuff would like not be fun. So then there's a process of sort of uncovering what you enjoy, what you love, like where did you lose sight of it, what made you lose sight of it. There are also all kinds of like physical things that you can do, right? You can take care of your body and then your interest will naturally grow. So you can do stuff like yoga, meditation, eating healthy food, like all of that kind of stuff is going to be good for you. You know, if you go see your doctor, you know, get your vitamin D levels checked, get, you know, there are all kinds of biological things that can result in a lack of motivation. So you can kind of work on some of those things. And remember that just because you've lost your interest doesn't mean that you can't find it again. You have to really figure out how it got buried. So for a neurotypical person, the more important something is, the more it sinks in. But for ADHD, if we don't ever hear it in the first place, it doesn't matter how important it is because we never heard it. That when we are relaxed, something can go wrong. When we are relaxed, something will go wrong. And so how do we correct against this? Being relaxed doesn't work for us, so we start to become paranoid. You cannot rely on your mind to remember. ADHD feels like waiting for an email that says you're in big trouble and everyone's mad at you. Hello, Dr. K. I really enjoy what you do, and I've watched many of your videos, particularly those about ADHD. As an autistic man with a lot of overlapping symptoms, I saw an Instagram post that read, ADHD feels like waiting for an email that says you're in big trouble and everyone is mad at you. That line hit me harder than I expected. It captures this constant low-level tension I carry, especially in professional settings. It rarely shows up in my personal life, thankfully. I feel secure with the people that I care about, but in contexts where composure matters more than content, I'm always waiting for a mistake with my name on it to surface. No matter how organized I try to be, there's this quiet dread that something slipped through the cracks. A form I missed, an unanswered email, and one day it'll all come crashing down. Part of me thinks this is just adulthood. Nobody points out small errors anymore. They just accumulate until they become something big. So I overcorrect with perfectionism. Not because I need perfection, but because I can't tell what actually matters. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about this. So oftentimes, people with ADHD grow up with this sense of constant dread. This kind of like baseline paranoia that something is going to pop up and it's going to screw me over and I'm going to be in big trouble and everyone's going to be disappointed in me. So where does this feeling come from and how do we protect against it? So the first is that we have to understand if we think this way, there's a good reason for it, okay? Now, I want y'all to understand what it's like to grow up with ADHD. So this was my constant state when I still have nightmares about, it's hilarious. Like, I had a nightmare about 2 years ago that I forgot to turn in an assignment in high school. And since I forgot to turn in an assignment in high school, I didn't pass the class. And someone found out that I didn't pass the class, which means that I never graduated from high school. And since I never graduated from high school, that invalidated my college degree because I never finished high school, so college is invalid. Since I never went to college, that invalidated my medical degree, which invalidated my residency, which means that I'm no longer a psychiatrist. So this is like some weird, like, what is this? Like, what is going on? So here's what we got to understand. If you have ADHD, you grow up in a situation where you cannot rely on your mind. You cannot rely on your mind to remember. Now, technically, it's not remembering. Technically, it never goes in the first place. So let's remember that memory is stuff getting stored to the hard drive and being recalled to the hard drive. There's an attentional component where whether it ever gets written to the hard drive in the first place, and then it has to be pulled out. So a lot of people with ADHD think they have memory problems. They don't have memory problems. Memory is actually perfectly intact. It never gets written down in the hard drive in the first place. You weren't paying attention, so it didn't sink in. It's not that you forgot, it's that you never knew. Now, the practical result of this is that if you've got ADHD, you walk into school one day and you're not worried about anything, and then you discover that you forgot an assignment. So I was not worried, and I'm in trouble. A week later, I walk into school, not worried, get in trouble. Oh my God, I forgot I had a test. So over time, what happens with ADHD is we learn that when we are relaxed, something can go wrong. When we are relaxed, something will go wrong. And so how do we correct against this? Being relaxed doesn't work for us, so we start to become paranoid. We start to have this low level of dread always at the back of our mind because we have learned time and time and time again, when we are relaxed, things go wrong. Now, there are a couple of things that are different about people who don't have ADHD, people who are neurotypical. They too forget things. The problem is that they don't forget things nearly as much, and oftentimes the consequences aren't so severe. And I want y'all to really think about this for a second. So the problem with ADHD is it is a sensory attentional disorder. So for a neurotypical person, the more important something is, the more it sinks in. But for ADHD, if we don't ever hear it in the first place, it doesn't matter how important it is because we never heard it. So people who are neurotypical will also forget things. They won't pay attention 100% of the time, but they don't forget exams. They don't forget projects. They don't forget weddings, right? They don't forget like the big stuff. So some of that stuff is intact in neurotypical people. So everyone will forget, but it doesn't happen as often and the consequences are not as severe. Once the consequences are severe and it happens often enough, we turn on this dread mode, this paranoia mode, because we can't trust ourselves when we are relaxed. When we are relaxed, we make mistakes. So let's constantly be in a state of dread. There are a couple of other features here that are really important to understand. Two other neurodevelopmental aspects that are important. The first is emotional regulation. So people with ADHD experience emotions more rapidly and more intensely and have difficulty regulating their emotions. So a neurotypical person, when they feel a little bit of worry or paranoia, their ability to calm themselves down is naturally more robust than someone with ADHD. So some people have even hypothesized that there is an emotional dysregulation subtype of ADHD. So we think about attention deficit disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. There's a subtype that's the H, right, that has hyperactivity or not. And there's a third subtype of ADHD, attention deficit disorder with emotional dysregulation as a primary feature. So this is not so much about the dread being justified, but your ability to control the dread is going to be impaired. The last thing is impulsivity. So I don't know if this makes sense, but the idea that you forgot something is actually an impulse. So you're going about your day, and then there's an impulse. Oh my God, you forgot something. And you're like, wait, what did I forget? I didn't forget anything. Let me think. I can't think of anything. Goes away. Oh my God, you forgot something. So I don't know if this makes sense. It's not just that you learned that you can't trust yourself. It is that your brain is more vulnerable to repeated impulses of dread and has more difficulty regulating those repeated impulses of dread. So how do we fix this? This is where the reason I talk about these other neurodevelopmental aspects is if you go to treatment for ADHD, then hopefully they will help you with some of these things. So when I made the ADHD guide, I tried to list out a bunch of stuff that you can do, everything from organization and planning to make sure that things don't fall through the cracks to emotional regulation stuff. Okay, so all that stuff is laid out there. So the most important thing that I do with my patients is teaching them damage control. And what I'll do with them is we'll say they're worried about something going wrong. And so what we'll actually do is utilize a couple parts of the brain that are actually quite robust in ADHD. Number one is your sensory circuits. So oftentimes people with ADHD will have difficulty with like being overstimulated, will have difficulty with like, ARFID-like symptoms where certain textures really bother them, stuff like that. So sensory sensitivity is very high. We can use that to our advantage by giving ourselves sensory inputs. So literally what I'll tell my patients to do, and I think this works better on pen and paper than on a electronic device. There's certain neuroscience mechanisms for that as well. Anytime we write something, it slows down our thought process. We have to concentrate on that a little bit longer, which means it sinks in a little bit deeper. And the act of writing somehow commits things to memory a little bit better. There's just some connections there with just the way that our brain works. Okay. Speaking, by the way, so anytime we generate something from our mind, that thing gets locked into our head a little bit more. So if you have ideas in your head, but you speak them out loud, you're more likely to remember them. Okay. So what we'll do is I'll tell my patients, look, just grab a piece of paper and at the end of every day, write down what you forgot. Just write down what you forgot. You're going to forget stuff. Oh, you're dreading this stuff. You're going to forget things all the time, right? Just write it down. So we discover a couple of really important things. First is that sometimes they forget things, which is totally fine. Oftentimes their fear of forgetting things is actually far greater than the actual amount of stuff that they forget. Right? Once you're paranoid about something, the likelihood of it happening is lower than what you think it is. That's very common. Okay, so this does a couple of things. It actually is quite reassuring because now you're getting sensory input. Okay, I'm not screwing things up every day. That in and of itself is so soothing for your mind. But you will say, but Dr. K, what about the days that I forget something? Great. When you forget something, write down what you did to handle it. And this is what's really cool. Sometimes I'll have patients come into my office with ADHD and they say, oh my God, my life is so chaotic. Everything is chaotic and I hate it. I can never rest. I can never relax. And what I find when I talk to these people is that they do really well in chaos. If you take a chaotic environment, you drop a neurotypical person into it, you drop an ADHD person into it, the ADHD person will outperform the neurotypical person. The really interesting thing, what's really scary is you may be dreading that you make a mistake, but usually people with ADHD are really fast at managing them. So they're actually quite good at damage control. And why are you quite good at damage control? Why are you good at writing a paper really, really quickly? Because you forgot about it until 45 minutes before class. You sat down, you started writing furiously. You have so much more practice with chaos because you're forgetting things all the time and you're creating it all around you. So what I'll tell them to do is even if you forget something, write down what you did to fix it and what that was like. And then we discover something really important, and this is what really gets the dread to disappear. The moment that you realize that you can handle things going wrong, you don't need to be paranoid about it anymore. You only need to be paranoid about problems that cannot be handled. This is why we have ICUs, intensive care units. What's the purpose of an ICU? ICUs are where we send the sickest patients. They have the highest ability for something to go wrong, but we have a better nursing to patient ratio. We have constant monitors. We have telemetry. We're doing checks all the time. There's a far larger team. There's a specifically trained, someone called an intensivist, a pulmonary critical care doctor who specializes in ICU care. The only reason you need to be paranoid is if your damage control capability is not good enough. Not if things go wrong. Things are absolutely going to go wrong. You will not remember everything. You will not pay attention to everything. Things will go wrong. Now, this isn't going to fix everything 100%, but if you do these things, if you actually start measuring how often you forget things, and you start really paying attention to how good you are at damage control, hopefully these two things will help you with this kind of paranoia. What questions do y'all have? Does this ADHD dread that comes from getting in punishment can stem from trauma as well? Absolutely. So this is what I want y'all to understand. So when a patient comes into my office with ADHD, they have some degree of depression or trauma until proven otherwise. So if you look at the causative relationship between mood disorders like major depressive disorder and ADHD, what you find is that there's a one-way street. if you have ADHD, the likelihood that you will develop depression is way higher. Compared to if you have depression, the likelihood that you develop ADHD is quite low. Okay? So what this means is that original thing, the original dynamic of you not being able to trust yourself, the reason you get programmed is because it's traumatic. Let's understand what trauma is. Trauma is not a disorder. This is why trauma is so hard to treat. It's not a disorder. PTSD is a disorder. But generally speaking, a traumatic experience against the body is not a pathology. It's not something going wrong. Getting sick is damage to our body, but our body adapts. Our body's immune system actually improves after an infectious trauma. Does that make sense? I don't know what the word infectious trauma, after an infection, let's just call it that. So the reason trauma is so hard to beat is because it is our body's adaptation mechanism. It's what it's wired to do. So I want y'all to think about this for a moment. If you didn't think that you forgot something and you forgot something, that's bad. And your body's like, how do we prevent this from happening again? And then you forget something again, and then you're like, oh my God, I didn't realize I forgot this. Now I'm screwed. So then our brain is sitting there and it's like, well, this guy relaxes and then forgets things. I've got an idea. How about we never let him relax? Because that's what the experience is. We're constantly in the jungle. There could be a tiger behind every tree and every bush. So we're going to be on a constant low level of alert. This dread in the back of the mind is absolutely trauma related, in the sense that we have negative experiences that hurt us, activate our negative emotional circuitry. And anytime our negative emotional circuitry activates, we're talking about the amygdala and the limbic system. What's sitting right on top of it? The hippocampus, where we learn. So learning and negative experiences are very tightly tied together, right? If I meet an animal for the first time, if you guys have ever seen like a rescue dog or rescue cat that has had negative experiences with humans, they are adapting. Trauma is an adaptation, not a pathology in its most basic sense. It can become pathologic when the adaptation is maladaptive or happens too much. But great question. The tiger everywhere.